Let's get one thing straight, not everyone expresses love with hugs, flowers, or sweet texts. Some people love differently, quietly, subtly, almost invisibly, and if you don't know what to look for, you'll miss it. Especially when it comes to avoidant types, they're not emotionally dead, they're emotionally guarded. They won't always say, "I love you." They might even freeze up when you say it, but here's the truth, they still care. They still love, they just do it, in a language that doesn't use words. See, people with avoidant attachment have built walls, not because they want to hurt you, but because at some point they were deeply hurt themselves. Love to them feels dangerous, so instead of saying "I love you," they'll fix something for you without being asked, check in when they know you're stressed, share something personal, even if it's small. Listen to your favorite song just to understand you better, invite you into their space, their routine, their life. These aren't just habits, these are bids for connection, but if you're only measuring love by how often they say it, you're missing the entire story. They love in action, not in declarations. They may not flood your phone with messages, but they remember the little things that matter to you. They may pull away during conflict, not because they don't care, but because they're trying to regulate a tidal wave of emotion they've never been taught how to ride. You have to look deeper when they let you in. When they let you see them without the mask, that is their "I love you." That is their vulnerability, and it's easy to get frustrated, to think they don't care, but it takes strength to learn someone else's language of love, especially when it's unfamiliar and quiet. So if you're with someone avoidant, ask yourself, are you expecting them to love you your way, or are you willing to recognize when they're trying to love you theirs? Love is a risk for them. Showing up is their courage. Don't dismiss their quiet efforts. Sometimes the loudest "I love you" is the one that's never said out loud. Not everyone says "I love you" out loud, and that doesn't mean they don't feel it. It doesn't mean they don't care. It means their way of expressing love doesn't always match the version we're taught to expect. Some people say "I love you" without using those 3 words. They do it in the way they remember your coffee order, in how they silently take care of things you never even noticed were bothering you, in how they listen when you talk about something they don't understand, simply because it matters to you. You might be waiting for a grand confession, a clear verbal declaration, but for them, love lives in subtleties, in making sure you got home safe, in texting back even when words feel heavy, in sitting with you in silence, not trying to fix anything, just being there. For some, saying "I love you" feels too exposed, too risky. Maybe they grew up in homes where love was withheld, where vulnerability was punished, where silence was survival. So now, even when they love you, they hesitate to say it. But their actions are trying to say it all the time. Love isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. It looks like staying when things get messy. It looks like showing up when you didn't ask. It looks like a softened tone when they're upset because they don't want to hurt you. It's picking you up from the airport, cooking your favorite meal after a long day, giving you space when they can tell you need it, even if they'd rather be close. It's easy to overlook these things, especially if your definition of love was shaped by movies or fairy tales. But real love, it often whispers, it hides in everyday moments, in the unspoken, in the unnoticed. You just have to pay attention, because when someone doesn't say "I love you" out loud, it doesn't mean they don't love you. It means they're speaking it in the only way they know how. And if you stop listening just because it's not verbal, you might miss something beautiful. Avoidants aren't cold, they're cautious, and there's a big difference between the two. What looks like distance is often just protection. What feels like emotional unavailability might actually be emotional overload they're trying to manage. Avoidants have learned to guard themselves, not because they don't want connection, but because connection once came with pain. At some point in their life, being vulnerable didn't feel safe. Maybe they reached out and were rejected. Maybe they opened up and were shut down. Maybe the people they needed the most were emotionally unavailable themselves. So they built walls not to keep you out, but to keep themselves from falling apart. They learned to soothe, to rely only on themselves, to retreat when things get too close, too intense, too uncertain. And that behavior can look like indifference, like they don't care, like they're not invested. But that's not the full story. Avoidants feel deeply. They just don't always know what to do with those feelings. When things start to get emotionally intimate, their alarm system goes off, not because they don't like you, but because they fear losing control. They fear being seen, being known, and worse, being hurt. So instead of leaning in, they pull away, not to punish you, but to protect themselves. They're cautious, not cruel. They're scanning for safety, not distance. They need time. They need consistency. They need to see that closeness won't be used against them, that expressing affection won't come at the cost of their peace. Avoidants are like people trying to love from inside a glass room. They see you, they feel it all. They just don't always know how to open the door. So they love through small gestures, through doing, not saying, through presence, not pressure. And yes, they can seem hard to read, hard to reach, but when they do let you in even a little, that's a big deal. It means they're fighting their instinct to retreat. It means they're choosing trust over fear. It means they care more than they're ready to admit. So no, avoidants aren't cold. They're cautious with their heart because it's been mishandled before. And the fact that they're still trying, still showing up in their way, says more than words ever could. Love feels risky for them, not because they don't want it, but because deep down they associate love with danger. Not the kind of danger you run from physically, but the kind that makes your chest tighten, your walls rise, and your past scream louder than the present. For them, love isn't just about connection. It's about exposure. It's about giving someone access to the most vulnerable parts of who they are. And when you've been let down before, when trust has been broken, or emotions were used against you, that kind of vulnerability feels like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there's a net. They want to love, they want to be loved, but the cost feels high. Because what if it goes wrong again? What if they're too much, or not enough? What if showing their real self ends in rejection, just like before? So instead of diving in, they dip a toe. They move slowly. They second guess. They overthink simple things, like replying too fast, saying too much, or needing too deeply. Because for them, love is a risk assessment. Every gesture, every word, every feeling is filtered through a lifetime of emotional caution. They've learned to expect the worst, to prepare for abandonment, to stay in control, because control means safety. In love, love means surrender. So when someone starts to mean something to them, it's not always met with excitement. Sometimes it's met with fear. Not fear of the person, but fear of what that kind of closeness can awaken. Fear of losing their independence, fear of relying on someone who might not stay, fear of letting go of the armor they've worn for years. And yet, even with all that fear, they still try, in small ways. In guarded ways, but they try, and that's what makes it powerful. They're not careless with their heart. They're careful, they're cautious, because love feels like the most unpredictable, uncontrollable thing in their world. It threatens the emotional order they've built to survive, and breaking that pattern, that's terrifying, but it's also where real connection begins. Not when someone loves easily, but when someone loves even when it feels like the hardest thing to do. They express love through actions, not words. They might not say it often. You may never hear long speeches, romantic poems, or dramatic confessions. But if you look closely, they're speaking all the time. Not with what they say, but with what they do. They'll make sure your car has fuel before a long drive. They'll quietly fix the thing in your house you've been complaining about. They'll remember what you said in passing and do something about it weeks later. For them, love isn't about saying the perfect thing. It's about showing up. It's checking in when you're going through something, even if their message is short. It's making sure you're warm when it's cold out, even if they don't say a word. It's choosing to sit beside you when you're quiet instead of filling the silence with noise. They express love by being dependable, by doing what they said they'd do, by being there, especially when you're not asking. They might not know how to talk about emotions openly, but their actions speak with clarity. They'll offer help without making a big deal of it. They'll rearrange their schedule so they can show up for your important moments. They'll drive the long way just to make sure you get home safe. They won't always tell you how much they care, but they'll learn the things that make you feel supported. They'll ask about your day, not because they love small talk, but because they want to be part of your world. They may not be emotionally expressive with words, but they're emotionally invested through behavior. They'll bring you medicine when you're sick. They'll quietly clean the kitchen after you cooked dinner. They'll notice what you need before you say it. And while you might be waiting for them to open up emotionally, they're already loving you in the only way they trust, through action, through consistency, through small, repeated signs that say, "I'm here, I see you, I care." It's easy to overlook these gestures, to think, why don't they just say it? But not everyone feels safe with emotional expression. Not everyone was taught that it was okay to be open, vulnerable, or emotionally verbal. So they learned to express themselves by doing, by solving problems, by easing burdens, by making your life a little bit easier without calling attention to it. And if you learn to notice those patterns, you'll realize they've been saying, "I love you," all along, just not in the way you expected. Quiet gestures that speak volumes. The things they do without making noise. The moments that don't draw attention, the actions that are easy to miss unless you're really looking, like staying up until you get home safely, even if they never say a word about it, like remembering how you take your coffee and making it just right without asking, like sending you a song that says what they can't. These are the moments where love lives, not always in the grand gestures, but in the subtle ones. They won't shout their feelings. They won't always label them. But their quiet efforts speak louder than any sentence ever could. They'll walk on the traffic side of the street when you're together. They'll hand you their jacket when you're cold, without asking if you need it. They'll fix things behind the scenes so you never have to ask twice. They'll give you the last bite even if they were hungry too. These small, gentle acts often go unspoken, but they're filled with meaning. It's how they show you they're paying attention, that they're thinking about you, that you matter. They'll text you good luck before something important and let me know how it went. After, they'll listen more than they speak. They'll remember things you forgot you told them, not because they're trying to impress you, but because you're genuinely on their mind. They may not be comfortable with big displays, but they'll check in when you're unusually quiet. They'll notice when you're off, even if you're pretending to be okay. They won't always say, "I'm here for you," but they'll show up when no one else does. They'll sit with you in silence when words aren't enough. They'll offer you space when they feel you pulling away, not to abandon you, but to respect what you need. These aren't accidental. They're intentional but quiet, because love doesn't always need a microphone. Sometimes it's the way they wait until you're ready to talk, or the way they change their plans to support yours, or how they open up a little more even when it's hard for them. Quiet gestures aren't always dramatic, but they're powerful. Because in those small moments, they're letting you see their care. They're showing you that you're not alone. Even if the words aren't there, the meaning is. You just have to slow down and see it. Because once you start noticing those quiet acts of love, you'll realize they've been speaking to you all along. So the next time you find yourself wondering if they care, look beyond the silence, look past the missing words. Because love doesn't always arrive in the form you expect. Sometimes it shows up in the quiet, in the effort, in the consistency, in the details no one else notices. The truth is, some people love you so deeply, they don't need to say it out loud. They just need you to feel it, and if you learn to listen with more than your ears, you'll hear it everywhere.